Audio unleashed.
Let's get this thing rolling.
Yeah. What are we talking about this week, buddy?
We're going to talk about, well, first of all, this big controversy that's been raging in the audio world about our buddy, Erin, who's a YouTube audio guy, and his battle with Eric Alexander, who's the founder and chief engineer of Tekton Design speakers. Much has been written, much has been said, but we're going to have a unique take on this.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were upset that we didn't cover this last episode. But I mean, it was still, I'm kind of glad that we didn't, because it hadn't really resolved itself until after that episode had even released, much less when we recorded it. So,
well, and plus we could, that gave us time. You literally told me about it right as we were starting recording the last podcast. And that gave me time to dig in deep and to make me realize that in ways, Eric Alexander is the victim here.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna put a pin in that. We're gonna come back to that, but we've got some other introductions to do here. So I'm gonna introduce the next one. You sent this to me. You sent me a link to a post on The Honest Broker by Ted Gioia called "The Rise of the Anonymous Music Star," which plays very much into some stuff that I talked about last episode. I mean, he covers a lot of the same ground, but in a very different way, and not all of it AI related, which is where I was going, but sort of, in my opinion, the precursor to AI. So basically, long story short, this guy's talking about a guy named Johan Rohr, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, who a Scandinavian music artist who is responsible for astonishing 15 billion streams on Spotify, most of it not under his name, most of it pseudonymous. But he's sort of talking about this trend of people having very popular streams and nobody knows who did it, who made the music, because there's nothing distinctive about the music. It's designed to be background noise. So we're going to dig into that and talk about it a little bit. What are we going to follow that up with?
Last week was the AXPONA show. I got a lot of press releases for it, and one of them I got was for the Gryphon Audio PowerZone 3. I read this, and Gryphon Audio is a respected audio company that makes really expensive amplifiers that have tens of thousands of dollars worth of metalwork alone, and they put out a couple hundred or 300 or whatever watts, and they have really, they're more or less in the same range as like D'Agostino and stuff like that, right? I've never actually heard their products except at shows, but I have a certain amount of respect for them. And so I saw this thing come out. It's the PowerZone 3. It's hard to define what it is. You plug it into your wall socket, or you plug a very high-end cable from the wall socket into this thing, and then you plug all your other crap into this thing.
I don't think it's very hard to explain. It's called a power strip. They sell it at Lowe's.
It's $14,000.
They don't sell those at Lowe's.
And then it started talking about how it's crystal optimized wiring inside resonance tuned chambers. I'm like, what the hell? And so I dug deep into it. They're actually getting the technology from another company. Here on the Audio
Unleashed
podcast, we are always interested in digging into AC power filtration and things like that, just because they're so essential to great audio.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
Yeah, I think we figured that out by now, buddy.
Okay. But, I want to go into this. I want to pose the question is like, why is this manufacturer that seems very respectable going with this thing that is, by all appearances, wackadoodle? We'll go into it a little bit.
To quote Anya from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I have a theory.
Okay, good. And what are we doing for our Patreon segment?
Speaking of AXPONA, we're going to dig into some AXPONA coverage, pull up a recurring segment that we used to do back in the day, where we would take a show report or series of show reports and sort of dig in and go, hey, we weren't at the show. Let's attend it vicariously by other people's coverage. So you had linked to the Absolute Sounds coverage.
Mm-hmm.
We've also got some stereo coverage, and our buddy Erin. Stereophile coverage, absolutely.
Yeah.
And our buddy Erin Hardison of Erin's Audio Corner did his own video, which I thought was really good.
Oh,
and
I didn't see that. You have to tell me about it.
It's kind of my favorite of the bunch. And I think it was just Erin's enthusiasm that really, his enthusiasm tempered by his skepticism that really made it, to me, some of the most valuable coverage of the show.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah. So
did he hear the new Tekton Design speakers?
I think they probably had a "No Erin's Allowed" sign on the Tekton booth. I'm guessing. I don't know.
All right.
Well, you know what? That's a good segue. You're so good at segues, man.
Yeah.
Let's start talking about this Tekton thing, buddy.
Erin did a review that was, a pretty good review, basically, and he found a couple little anomalies in the measurements, and Eric Alexander threatened him with litigation, which Eric Alexander claims, by litigation, he just meant that his lawyer would talk to your lawyer on the phone.
Yeah.
But I did look it up in Merriam-Webster dictionary, and it does say lawsuit. So if you threaten someone with litigation, it means you are threatening them with a lawsuit. Yeah. And to say otherwise is stupid. And I think I will, in many cases, since this guy has threatened a lawsuit, I'm going to probably say, in my opinion, a lot here. But I'm not going to say, in my opinion, in that case. That is just stupid. To think that you threaten someone with litigation and it doesn't mean a lawsuit.
Well, the good thing is we're not doing measurements here, so I don't think we're going to get sued, because that's what Eric seems to be really happy about, people publishing measurements. It happened with Amir at Audio Science Review. Now it's happened with Erin. And there have been, I should have looked to see if this post is actually still up, because Eric has been on a post deleting spree, and also YouTube video deleting spree. No, it actually is. This video, this post from Facebook is still up. He deleted another one that I'll talk about later, but he says, "Everyone, thank you for the overwhelming support. I sincerely apologize to Erin and everyone either hurt or offended. I'm very sorry. Sadly, I must say," this is where he goes, of course, full Trump. "Many are missing the point. Be critical of what we do. Trash talk me and what we do. I'll tolerate it. Publish measurements that fail to square up with what this is a little convoluted. Publish measurements that fail to square up with what I know to be misleading, even when it's in small increments, and I feel obligated to speak up." I don't think that means what he thinks it means. But anyway, apparently, in Eric's own words, what he's upset about are the measurements that are not, in his opinion, accurate. So,
I have a hypothesis. As someone who's done a lot of measurements over the last 30 years and who has done a zillion reviews with measurements and dealt with a zillion manufacturers. I'm going to say that very often reviewers' measurements are better than the manufacturer's measurements. And I'll tell you why. Reviewers publish their measurements. I mean, by the very nature of what they do, they publish their measurements. If the readers see the measurements and the measurements don't look right, the readers will comment in the comment section. Sometimes manufacturers, when I was learning to measure, Vance Dickinson, the editor of the Voice Coil and the author of the Loudspeaker Design Cookbook, who's a friend of mine, he would call me up and he'd say, "Hey, I saw your measurement of this thing. You probably better go check this setting on your analyzer." Right?
Yeah.
And several times he did. And Floyd Toole called me up one time and he's like, "Hey, I saw your measurement of this thing," and blah, 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 blah. And was asking me questions about how I did it. And if you're a reviewer, you are publishing your stuff. It is out there for critique. You are the absolute opposite of being in a bubble. If you're a manufacturer, very few of these manufacturers publish their measurements. And Eric didn't publish his measurements. Now he says he's going to. But very few of them publish their measurements. Their measurements cannot be critiqued. They exist in a bubble. Now, there are speaker manufacturers who are really deep on measurements. Paul Barton is one of PSB. Andrew Jones, currently of MoFi, who's he work for now? MoFi.
Yeah.
He's worked for lots of people. But Andrew Jones is really deep on measurements. And, the Harman guys, JBL, et cetera, all deep on measurements.
Paradigm,
yeah. A lot of speaker manufacturers are not. I've been to speaker manufacturers where they sat in a normal office with an 8-foot ceiling doing measurements. And some of these people made good speakers too. Probably the worst measurement technique I've seen was a company called Aerial Acoustics, and they made spectacularly good speakers.
Yeah.
And plus, I'm going to say, I looked at Eric's patent, and this is the bad thing is I had largely ignored this guy's work, but now I'm looking at it, and I have things to say that he'd probably rather people didn't say. But I looked at his patent, and he's using a Clio, which is the same thing I have, and it's a pretty simple device. It's about I think I paid $3,000. I've put an update into it and all that stuff. But Erin and Amir from Audio Science Review are using clip analyzers, which are. I mean, they're about $100,000. I know Erin got his used, so he got it for cheaper. But they're still, you can buy a very nice car for what a clip will costs.
Oh yeah,
and they're automatic, and they're kind of a lot more reliable than a Clio. And also, they do CTA 2034, which Clio doesn't do unless you export all the files laboriously into some other program that does it for you. So Erin and Amir are both way ahead of Eric Alexander when it comes to measurements.
Yeah.
They are miles ahead. They have a much stronger commitment. They are putting their measurements out for critique. He has a lot to learn.
Yeah.
And he'll learn it once he starts publishing his measurements, he's not
going to publish his measurements. He always says this.
He will.
He always says this though. He's always like, I'm going to publish the measurements and show that you're wrong. And then later somebody goes, are you going to publish those measurements? He's like, no. It's a common refrain with him. It's been a refrain for a long time. I'm going to publish the measurements. I'm going to do it. You just watch. And I'm still watching.
I will say, no one's ever threatened to sue me over my measurements. Yeah. I do not submit my measurements to manufacturers unless there's just something really weird going on. I mean, a big problem. And even sometimes not then, because I don't have time, frankly. And there are limits to what I can do. I mean, honestly, my measurements had basically all been done on my time because, with rare exceptions, my employer never expected me to do it. I just did it because I thought it was necessary. And in most cases, I did it with gear I bought myself.
Yeah.
Okay. So for me to devote even more time to coddling some manufacturer. And this is a good segue into what I think is the big problem here.
Yes.
I have another theory. Would you like to hear this one?
I would, always.
And you are kind of right in the mix here too.
Yep.
Because if you look at what Eric Alexander does with his speakers, if you look at, say, John Atkinson's measurements, it's like, these seem to work fine. Mm-hmm. And they're affordable. And you can get them painted in cool colors.
They don't measure the way you and I thought they would the first time we saw them. Do you remember that first conversation that we had where you sent me a picture and you're like, what the heck? And I just started Xing out drivers and going, fix it for you.
That was so funny. But it does work. It does work. It clearly works. Okay. He doesn't need to be fighting with reviewers. He doesn't need to be spinning this thing in the implausible ways that he does, and we will dig into that. So I'm not criticizing his speakers at all. I'm criticizing his behavior, but I'm also criticizing publications who have encouraged it.
Yep.
And you and I both worked for one of them, and that's Home Theater Review.
Yep.
And they reviewed a lot of his stuff. Mm-hmm. And if I remember correctly, they were all done by a guy named Terry London, who is far from a knowledgeable reviewer, someone who does not understand how the products work, or certainly does not have any in-depth understanding of how the products work, someone who does not appear to understand how to do a legitimate comparison of audio products, someone who basically, I would read his reviews and I would think like, okay, so he looked at the marketing for the products and amped it way up.
I never edited any of Terry's reviews, so I didn't really have any firsthand experience then. But, I was working for Home Theater Review then, and I read it. And, there are words like revolutionary. I mean, I'm sorry. But No, it's not revolutionary. This is not a revolution in speaker design, but yeah, it was very, very glowing. This isn't the one. I don't think the one you linked in the show idea board is the one where Terry bragged about the low noise floor of the speaker.
Oh, God.
But that was a different Tekton speaker, I believe.
Yeah, which is just the most absurd crap. Anyway, I don't know if that came from Tekton or from him, but you know, and then there's a stereophile review that Eric refers to. You know, it's a Herb Reichert review, who's one of their, you know, subjective reviewers. So, you know, you don't know what he's going to say. Although, to Herb's credit, he does get most speakers right, I would say. Anyway, yeah. But they quoted, and this is a thing that Stereophile's been doing for, I don't know, probably 10 or 12 or 15 years, where like in the lead of the article, they just start quoting the manufacturer's marketing materials.
Yeah.
And so Herb, you know, rather than like analyzing what their marketing claims are, Herb basically has lengthy quotes from Eric Alexander. And I started reading this, and again, I hadn't really looked that much at this guy's stuff because it's like, well, you know, I wanted to review some for Home Theater Review, but somehow that never happened. And that was probably a good decision. Yeah. But anyway, because no one had measured this stuff, and I wanted to measure it. Oh, who knows? Maybe I would have been like, hey, this stuff really works. But anyway, you know, he's making this bizarre claim, and he's got a patent. And I read the patent. I looked at his videos. And I have to say, it does not appear to me that he possesses a strong understanding of musical acoustics, because the whole basis of his design, while it seems to work fine, the whole intellectual basis of it is absurd.
Yeah.
So he says that basically the mass of the driver has to match the mass of whatever is producing the sound.
Right.
Basically is what he's saying. And he uses the example in here of a violin string, and how, you know, the mass of a violin note at 440 hertz, I assume he's talking about the A string, which is 440 hertz, the open A string on a violin, is 1/3 of a gram. Okay. And how it produces all these overtones and harmonics, but when you play it back, it's lumped up as a single resultant wave, and I have no idea what that means. Or I think I kind of know what he means, but last time I heard that was called recording sound. You know, a recorder doesn't go, oh, I'm going to record the fundamental, and I'm also going to record the harmonic, the second and the third and the fourth, and I'll give all those as discrete streams. No, it's one waveform. It's and your speaker gets one waveform. There's two wires that go to your speaker.
Yep.
You know, it's not like everything's lumped together. That's the way audio works. Okay, so he's talking about how, you know, the mass of the violin string is 1/3 of a gram, and a woofer tweet or woofer mid-range whatever is too heavy. Is so much heavier than that it can't reproduce all the overtones, and how you have to reproduce these through tweeters. And so he has these multiple tweeters, and he can cross them over a lot lower than you would a single tweeter. And the ring of tweeters only covers, you know, certain frequency ranges that are relatively low for a tweeter. And then he defaults to a center tweeter for the higher frequencies, right? And that way he keeps it from beaming, as, you know, which you would if you just put all those tweeters in a circle like that, it's going to create a beam of sound. But he has overcome that. It's clear from the measurements that he has overcome that. Well, fine. That's great. But the problem is there's just no evidence at all for what he's saying. Yeah, sure. Okay, the moving mass of a string of a violin is 1/3 of a gram. String doesn't make the sound on the violin.
No.
Almost all of the sound comes from the sound board of the violin. And I have a demo of this for you right now.
Cool.
Live demo on the Audio
Unleashed
podcast. Nobody else has this. Does Darko have this? No, he does not.
Many people are saying that this is the defining aspect of our podcast.
Indeed.
Many people are.
So I am one of the few people who can readily do this. I have here a Risa electric ukulele, and this thing is basically like a chunk of 1x4. It's all kind of drilled out, and it's got strings over it, right? So there's nothing to really resonate in there except for the string itself. So all the sound comes from the string. And then I have an Ohana ukulele, regular ukulele with, a soundboard, sound holes, and acoustic ukulele. So I'm going to play them both for you right now. Just one note, and you can hear the difference between just a string and a string with a soundboard. Okay, hang on just a sec. Okay, here's the reset. I'm going to hold it like 6 inches from the mic and just kind of pluck it a little bit. Did you get that?
Barely.
Okay, here's the Ohana. Same distance, plucked about as hard.
Yeah. World's different.
And the soundboard of this Ohana uke, it's probably, more mass than a typical mid-range driver.
Can I ask a question real quick?
What?
Can I? Yeah. So I didn't read the patent because I knew you had this covered, but I'm listening to you describe it. And here's the first thing that pops into my brain. What is his argument with regard to the woofers and sort of the mass of the woofers with in relation to the radiating surface of whatever is creating those low frequency notes? I mean, what?
It gets worse.
Okay.
It gets worse.
Okay.
In the patent, he talks about the example of an electric bass. And the string on an electric bass, and how you put it into a bass amp, and you got this big speaker in a bass amp.
Oh, no.
And this big speaker is, basically having a deleterious effect on the sound because it's not capturing all the natural harmonics of the electric bass.
Oh, buddy.
Which I'm just like flabbergasted by this, and you get probably less sound off an electric bass than you do off of a electric guitar.
Yeah.
The world of bass players is not sitting here going like, "Oh my God, you mean I can get all these new upper harmonics out of my bass?" Well, you don't want that because then it gets in the way of other instruments. If you want that, you can go buy an 8-string bass or a 12-string bass, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they play on the beginning of Jeremy, Pearl Jam, the 12-string bass, right?
Oh, cool.
Oh, and then another thing is like, wait a minute. So you're talking about the violin note at 440 hertz, and you got a string that's 1/3 of a gram vibrating for that, right? Well, the violin has another 2.5 octaves of range.
Yeah.
So what about all those notes? As does the flute. The flute goes almost up as high as a violin. And the flutes, and what about the air mass in the flute? Right? Because in the flute, it's the air mass is what's producing, it's the resonating air mass that produces the sound, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know how much air is in a flute, but I do know that 1 cc of air is about 1 milligram.
Okay.
And so what do you got, 10 cc's? So you're talking 20 milligrams, which is a lot lighter than his 3rd gram tweeter.
Yeah.
So it's just, none of this makes any sense. And Stereophile just published it. They didn't question it. And Stereophile has at least 2 people there. John Atkinson, the technical editor, and Jim Austin, the editor-in-chief, who know better.
Yeah.
Some of these manufacturers are just coddled by these publications for the advertising.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, let's just let the manufacturer have an open forum and spew whatever nonsense they want to spew, and we're not going to question it. Maybe in the measurements we'll question it, but we're not going to. It's like, this is just horrible. This is not journalism. This is marketing.
It is marketing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's just and the whole thing is just such a shame. This is why I say Eric Alexander, in ways, is the victim. A villain and a victim, but this guy started out and he had kind of an interesting idea for a speaker that he actually got to work, but he had all these people saying he was a genius, and he had all these publications, publishing, certainly at least a couple of them, published his marketing spiel without criticism and without debunking it, probably without looking at the patent.
Yeah.
And so he's gotten used to this just really favorable treatment from everybody.
To the point to where he cannot tolerate any criticism whatsoever. I mean, what the main thing that seemed to be the sticking point with Erin's review was this tiny little resonance at 250 hertz or thereabouts. And he would email Erin going, well, somebody else canceled another $6,000 order today, and it's your fault. You know,
so he clearly thinks it's our job to sell his products.
Yes. And he's like, every time somebody cancels an order, I'm going to email you. And it's just like,
yeah,
buddy, that is,
and it's pathetic. A shame. It's a shame because the guy has a kind of good idea, and you know, kudos to him for making it work. And you know what? Coming up with pet theories about how audio works. Well, that's how audio advances. Is somebody comes up with a hypothesis and they go like, I wonder if this would work. Yeah. And they try it and it works or it doesn't or whatever. And you move on and you improve, or you go like, no, it didn't work. But it's like he came up with this thing. And I'd say, you know, this is certainly, is it miraculous? No. I mean, I've heard 2 of his speakers ever, and one of them, the demo was horrible. They were playing through like 3-watt tube amps and they were cranking classic rock. It just sounded terrible. It wasn't his speaker's fault. Yeah. It's a bad demo. And then I heard him in another, smaller ones in another room at Rocky Mountain like a year later. And I was like, oh, these sound pretty good.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with his product. It's just
and I'll say this in terms of the damage he's doing to himself. If you look at the original review that Erin posted before he pulled it down, I watch all of Erin's stuff when he publishes it because I just really enjoy his enthusiasm. And there were people in the comments section going, like I wouldn't have taken that speaker seriously, but this is actually, I might actually need to listen to these now. You know, that's how not negative this review was. Erin had some issues that were like, well, this isn't my preference, but people were in the comment section going, well, crap, now I have to take this company seriously, until all of this happened. And they're right back to, nope, never buying Tekton now. So he shot himself in the foot.
Yeah. And it's like, and you know, had he not had press people telling him he was a great genius.
Yeah.
Yeah. And had he not had publications just printing all of his crap.
Yeah.
Which, you know, someone should have told him a long time ago. He should have, if I had done the first review of his product, I'd have been like, yeah, dude, that doesn't make any sense, but your product works fine. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I would have said in the article, this doesn't make any sense, but the product works fine.
Yeah.
And then he would have maybe abandoned that and said, hey, look, you know what? I've just got a different take on this. It clearly works. And, you know, I like the way it sounds. Maybe you will too. You know, the same pitch as a planar magnetic speaker or electrostatic or a horn speaker. It's like, they're all different takes. And you know what? They all work.
Yeah.
They're just different sounds.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's going to be pros and cons to what he's doing. And, you know, and different people will like it. And that's all he had to do. But he got seduced by fawning coverage in lightweight publications.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure that makes him the victim. It's just like a more tragic supervillain backstory, I guess, right?
Man, we have a definitive take on this.
Yeah. Oh man. Anyway, we've run too long here.
All our opinion, everything we've said is our opinion, except for the things that we said about musical physics, which are fact.
Yes, absolutely.
Sorry.
Anyway, you ready to take a break, buddy?
Yeah.
All right. Let's go get some water, powder our noses, and we will be right back to talk about the Anonymous Music Store. to Audio
Unleashed.
Oh, you threw a twist at me that time. You see, that's not even that. You have left Dennis impersonation territory entirely there. So I don't know. You're going off in your own tangent with that one.
I've always said that it's not an impersonation of you. It's an impersonation of a drunk guy at a Molly Hatchet concert in 1977.
That's kind of what you think of me anyway. So how is that different from an impersonation of me?
That's more of like a guy at a Molly Hatchet concert who's hopped up on something else. I can't even remember all the drugs they had back then. So what are we talking about?
We are talking about the rise of the anonymous music star from The Honest Broker. The author on this one is Ted Gioia. Is he related to Kenny Gioia, by the way? Do you know?
Oh, you mean the guy who does the Reaper videos?
Yeah.
I hope so, because they're both great. Although Kenny Gioia is just rocking.
He is so cool. But anyway,
we love you, Kenny. Thank God for you, Kenny. We wouldn't be able to have probably this podcast if it wasn't for you.
Yeah. But you know what? We like Ted too. So
we do.
Ted's got a new post that you sent to me, The Rise of the Anonymous Music Star. And he's basically talking about this guy. Let's see. Johann Rohr. Am I pronouncing the last name correctly? Rohr? Rohr.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I learned a new thing. So anyway,
the umlauts mean ooh.
Oh, umlauts mean ooh. Okay.
Yeah. So Motley Crue should actually be pronounced Motley Crue. It's true.
Okay, anyway. So, Rohr isn't famous, Dad says, but that hardly matters. He's generated an astonishing 15 billion streams on Spotify, and his invisible strategy got lots of support from the platform. So basically what he's talking about here is this guy's had 15 billion streams. Nobody knows who he is, but there's this thing where it's like Spotify's really pushing his stuff in playlists, things like that. And it's just kind of, it's sad to think that some of the most popular music on Spotify is sort of effectively Muzak.
Yeah.
But what drew you in here? Why did you put this in the idea board?
Because it really rocked my entire perception of music in a way that, we've seen articles kind of like this before, and we've talked about the invasion of AI into the world of music creation and things like that. This one, to me, was extra depressing. And, I'll always have the music I love, right? That's not going to go away. But it just shows the prospects for people creating new music are increasingly poor. And, when so much of your audience is willing to stream this guy's stuff, and the music is just very... I wouldn't even call it lo-fi beats. I wouldn't even call it spa music. It's kind of even less descriptive than either of those two.
Ted describes it as sonic treacle.
Lo-fi beats you can kind of enjoy. Even spa music, you can kind of go, you kind of enjoy it on some level. This is just like washes of sound and stuff and just kind of a big nothing.
Yeah.
Which I'm not criticizing him, dude. I'll swap places with him. I'll play this stuff instead of jazz and make myself some money. Mm-hmm. But man, anytime people create something that other people like, I guess, artistically at least, that's fine.
I don't think people like it though, buddy. And I think
they're clearly listening to it.
Right, but I think that's because the algorithm pushes it so hard. Spotify has motive to push this kind of thing because in fact, I saw something that said, and it may have even been in this article that in a lot of cases they're actually just sort of instead of paying royalties, these guys, it's like it's a work for hire kind of thing, and they're like, make us this music, we will pay you for it, right? We own it now. It really goes back to something I said last episode, where I think when we were talking about AI music and the sort of takeover of that, I was like, they've been preparing us for this for like 10 years. Like they have been pushing us to the point to where we would just sort of accept AI music. And it's crap like this. That's exactly what I was talking about. It is the anonymous stuff. It is you don't really know who's making it. It's not really, it's sort of enhanced white noise. But these algorithms are so popular that this is what's being pushed to people. And I think a lot of people have sort of been trained by better algorithms like Pandora. Back in the day, I actually enjoyed Pandora, man. I discovered some good music via Pandora, but that was an algorithm that was designed to sort of replicate a radio station. Well, the stuff with Spotify, no, it's not. It's designed to keep you listening and keep you engaged. That's a very different thing.
He's got a great quote here. Andy Warhol once promised everybody 15 minutes of fame, but on TikTok, that often gets reduced to 15 seconds of attention. Then the listener scrolls on to something else. And so much of my enjoyment of music has come through, listening to albums over and over because I couldn't afford to go buy more of them. And getting deeper into them. And a lot of those albums, I still, Yes albums or whatever, right? I still listen to them. And, you kind of got to know who the band was and what the strengths of the different band members were. And with Yes, of course, the band members were constantly changing. And you got to savor different aspects of what the band sounded like with different people in it and as they evolved and all that kind of stuff. And you don't get any of that with this because, you're the listener scrolling on to something else, as Ted Gioia says. And what I have to wonder from an audiophile standpoint is, audiophiles are into certain musicians and they listen to certain musicians or certain genres. And they probably, most of them are going to be pretty knowledgeable about some band or some performer or some genre or whatever, right? I know very few audiophiles that don't have a certain amount of expertise in some genre or some artist or whatever, right? But now you kind of really can't do that. So much of the music is not interesting enough. And frankly, I would say most of the top 40 would fit this too. Because
interesting. Yeah.
Well, so much of the top 40 is created by algorithms in the flesh.
Yeah.
Okay. By people like Max Martin and Jack Antonoff, these producer guys who have a certain sound and they know that within 30 seconds, you have to get to the chorus or whatever. And the chorus has to, and you want to have a key change here and you want to have this kind of beat, and you want to have this kind of dynamics and everything. And this is what people respond to. And those guys just repeat more or less the same formula over and over. And with the artists, with the vocalists, they comp the tracks, right? So they do 10, 20 takes and they assemble one take out of the best parts of multiple takes. And then they compress the hell out of it to where if you listen to a Taylor Swift song, the vocals do not vary in level at all. They are dead even. And I assume a great deal of it's auto-tuned. But even if you watch Taylor Swift performances now, she now performs like that. In other words, the humanity's gone. She performs as if, she's more of a machine.
Yeah.
And so many of the performers are like that. The humanity's gone and it's not interesting. And I have to wonder, how can you have an audio industry if there's nothing to listen to?
Wow. Yeah.
Granted, we'll always have those old Steely Dan records.
Yeah.
But,
that's a good point.
We may not have the sort of hardcore music fans. Music becomes more like lighting.
God. Don't actually,
or
you just
decor.
ruined. I like lighting. You just kind of ruined lighting for me, man.
Well, it becomes more like decor, and decor's fine.
Yeah.
But you don't get passionate about wallpaper.
Yeah.
So I found this whole thing really depressing. He's featuring this guy, Thomas Hewitt Jones, composer of the Funny Song, which I listened to, and I thought it was horrible, but hey, he got a lot of streams and more power to you, pal.
Yeah.
It was original, that's for sure. Did you hear it?
Yeah.
It's really annoying, but still. But, kudos to you. If I could think up something really awful and annoying and get 4 billion streams, I would do it. I would stop this podcast right now.
But it's just
right
on
it.
It's just so ephemeral because, he was never able to replicate that success, man. So,
yeah. It's like more, I don't want to call them one-hit wonders, but they're more billion stream wonders where they get like a colossal amount of stream, but no one knows who they are and no one cares. And they flick to the next thing. And maybe this is old man yells at cloud stuff, but it's been such a major part of my life. And I think obviously a major part of the lives of most of the people that listen to this podcast, if not every single one of them.
Yeah.
And for that matter, most of the people that read Stereophile and most of the people that read Soundstage and most of the people that even probably look at the audio reviews on CNET or something, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're all people that are passionate about music, passionate enough to where they actually buy a thing to play music on.
Yeah.
Okay?
I mean, it's like I was telling you earlier before we started rolling tape. I went to my first record store day this past weekend. Mm-hmm. As we're recording this, it'll be the weekend before last by the time we release it. But I was kind of expecting Black Friday. I was kind of expecting, sort of, I don't know, something defanged, something kind of corporate, whatever. And it turned out to be just this amazing organic celebration of passion for music. And it was people sharing their love of music with one another and sharing artists. And look, the record store that I went to, they've only been open for about 60 days now. It's Village Green Records here in Montgomery. We haven't had a record store in a long, long time, but Travis, owner of the store, I've met him twice. He already gets my tastes better than Spotify ever did. Like he's already recommending music to me that he'll like grab the record and put it on. And I'm like, dude, you get me.
That's great.
You understand how to find new stuff for me. No algorithm has ever been able to do that. And he did that in 2 conversations. And this place is just this, I don't know. It's kind of, I could see this place becoming my home away from home. I'm glad we talked about the last episode, I think, about the fact that I'm getting a record player and I'm glad now because whatever you want to say about the format of vinyl is connecting me with passionate music fans who are taking me out of my echo chamber and expanding my horizons, but in a really legitimately successful way. And I think it kind of takes face-to-face contact for that. So, all right, buddy, well, let's wrap this up. Go get something to drink real quick and come back and talk about Gryphon Audio PowerZone 3.
And we're back. This is Audio
Unleashed.
And we are going to talk about a new product introduced at AXPONA. More on AXPONA later for our Patreon subscribers. But this really caught my eye because I got the release. It's from Anthony Chiarella, who's their national sales manager, I think, and one of my favorite people in the industry, great guy. But, so Gryphon Audio is a Danish company, and they make, it's very expensive stuff, but it's no nonsense amps that all perform well. It's not some wacky thing that puts out 3 watts and costs $100,000. Puts out like maybe 300 watts and costs $100,000. But, it's got a lot of fancy metalwork on it, and all that metalwork is very, very expensive.
Yeah.
And, beautifully designed stuff. And every review I've seen, who cares about what some dude thinks of the sound, but the measurements I've seen were all really solid. And they make speakers too, which look well designed. So everything's fine. But then I see this thing, and it's the Gryphon Audio PowerZone 3. I'm still struggling to understand as you called it before. It's basically a power strip, but we're so used to seeing AC conditioning products that supposedly filter the AC coming out of your wall because there's supposedly all this noise on it that supposedly gets into your audio equipment and supposedly gets into the signal that goes to your speakers.
Yeah, and
supposedly reaches your ear. And we've pretty thoroughly debunked all that stuff. But this one was like a whole nother level. And I was really struck by it because I was like, why is Gryphon doing this?
Yeah.
And, especially because, I read up, I think I got the release and then I saw it pop up on various other sites like Six Moons, which is a, fairly far out there audio site, and, The Absolute Sound, well, no surprise there, and a couple other publications, although one of them, Tech Week Mag, called it an air conditioner, which I thought was pretty hilarious. I don't know why. I guess they got the release, and they posted, and they just had no comprehension of what it was. But
let's be honest. The press release is kind of nonsensical. So
right. So the press release, we should probably kind of give the company's pitch a little bit. It's a big box that's about the size of an amp, and you plug it into the wall, and then you plug all your components into this. But it doesn't have any filtering. And it doesn't have any storage.
Well, I mean, don't you think the whole random crystalline thing that they're talking about would be considered a filter of sorts?
In the sense that I was on some audio forum, I think it was this morning or yesterday or something, and some guy said, on some level, everything's a filter. I said, well, yeah. I mean, a 1-inch piece of speaker cable is a filter. It does have some capacitance, inductance, etc. It does have some effect on the signal. It may be super ultra high, ultra mega high frequencies. I don't know, but
it says. Do you mind if I just read this description
please,
here?
Go ahead.
It says it's achieved with a proprietary Hafner Tech conductor, a patent pending design comprised of adapted crystalline structures that facilitate the vibrational flow of electrons in an undisturbed way. As there's no loss of energy within the conductor, this technology produces no additional noise or heat. So it's kind of like it says it's a filter, but it's not a filter. I don't know. I can't make sense of this.
Well, it doesn't produce any additional noise or heat.
Yeah.
So at least there's that.
Okay.
Of course, neither does just like an AC cord.
Yeah.
Or whatever, right? So they licensed this from this Hafner guy. Did you go look at this stuff? This quantum acoustics company?
I tried, buddy, but my eyes glazed over really, really quick because he doesn't necessarily use quantum in the sense that I would use quantum. He uses quantum in the sense that I think Deepak Chopra would use quantum. And
like it's a cool sounding word.
Yes, exactly.
Basically.
Yeah.
Let me try to make some heads or tails of this. Okay, in nature, everything around us is aiming to reach balance. However, the path toward this point is strictly dependent on the environment. Every object or entity, simple or complex, will adapt itself to the conditions around blah, 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 blah. I'm still looking for a mention of audio.
Do you know what he's describing?
What?
He's describing the force.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, that exists.
It is. I just realized it. He's describing the force. Oh, man.
It's just the most, I don't even want to say it's ham wavy. It's just this sort of weird, ooky kind of bizarre. It is like, this is like AI Deepak Chopra.
Yeah. You must unlearn what you have learned.
It's like telling the AI, write me 300 words of kind of spiritual wellness sounding BS. And the AI would give you this. And
wrap it in carbon fiber.
Well, that's the whole thing. You're kind of spoiling one of my jokes.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
It's like all you look at this stuff and like, what the hell is this? Well, it's wrapped in carbon fiber. Okay. He doesn't really actually tell you what any of it is. But then he talks about on the About page, he talks about his career. And I thought this was really amusing because he talks about how he worked with people like Jason Bloom from Apogee Acoustics and Glenn Grew from Class A Audio and AJ Vandenhull. And I cherish them all and mostly the things I was able to learn from them. And I'm sitting here thinking, wait a minute, how did you get from these guys to a bunch of mystery meat in carbon fiber? And I'm like, what did they teach you? It's like, were they like, all right, listen, kid, you can talk all you want about inner detail, but whatever you got, you wrap that crap in carbon fiber and all your files will go for it. Which is the truth. That's the truth. It's the truth.
Oh God.
I can't say that any of those individuals, only one of whom I've met, had ever said that, but it's like that's the lesson this guy seems to have taken from whoever he learned from. Carbon fiber and these things that are like these sort of webbing things around the things, which seem to serve no purpose whatsoever. I don't know what they're called, but they make it look cool.
Yeah, it kind of looks like this. I'm allergic to adhesives. Most adhesives will just destroy my skin, and so a lot of times when I have to have an IV, they will wrap the gauze in stuff that looks like this, right?
Yeah,
because it sort of forms like a sleeve. So I'm looking at this going, this is reminding me of surgery. Yeah.
And what the hell purpose does it serve?
Well, it means they don't have to use adhesive on me.
Oh no, but on a piece of audio cable.
Oh, it means they don't have to use adhesive on it. I don't know.
But it's just covering the end of it. It's not doing anything.
Oh.
Look, maybe the Gryphon guys, maybe they don't really do a lot of serious comparative listening. And maybe they, quote unquote, heard this thing and maybe they said, oh, we really like it. Or maybe they're just like, hey, we need a power conditioner. And by the way, we make amplifiers and we don't want any filtration in there because our amps don't need it.
Yeah.
Like no good amp needs the filtration. So it's like, maybe they're like, hey, this thing is just like a basically glorified power strip. It won't affect the performance. Let's get this.
So there's another sentence in particular or passage that I want to point out here. PowerZone, this is the product we're talking about. We haven't mentioned the name in a while. We're going to loop back, mention the name.
Yeah.
PowerZone
please.
further benefits from Smart Stack TM technology, a patented compound developed by Denmark's Manetta Group. PowerZone is the first product outside the automotive industry to utilize this revolutionary material. The result is a dramatic reduction in mechanical resonance achievable in no other way. And I really just want to ask them, why does that matter? This is not a source device. This is not a turntable. This is not a valve amplifier. It is not a speaker. It's not a transducer. Why are we worried about mechanical resonance? Why is that bad in this case? Like
in what's effectively a power strip. I mean, your dog could walk across the top of this thing, and your dog could walk on your power strip or your power conditioner or whatever, and it wouldn't make any difference.
No.
I mean, it's just more of this AC crap seems to be like the big trend, and there's so much energy being put into this in high-end audio, and this clearly that's why this reputable manufacturer decided, well, we got to have something in there.
Yeah.
And they found this, and it's got lots of carbon fiber. As we've already established, audiophiles really go for that.
Yeah.
So granted, so do car owners, and so do some other people, I guess. What else do they put carbon fiber on? Oh, they make like bows, like bow and arrows, like you shoot with. Yeah. They make those out of carbon fiber now, I think.
Yeah.
But so carbon fiber looks cool, but what do these things do? I mean, maybe if you cut one open and actually see what's in there, because he doesn't show you, does he?
I don't think so.
Oh, he's got some that are in purple carbon fiber.
Ooh,
that's cool.
Swanky.
And blue carbon fiber. I'm sold.
Yeah. Does he have red?
I am sold.
If he doesn't have red, get out of here.
I'm not seeing red, but maybe it's a special order for an extra, $10,000 or
no,
something.
That's going to be like the Bono branded special edition that he releases for brand red.
Oh, yeah. But it's got a lot of this mesh stuff all over the place.
Yeah.
Oh, so the mesh goes around the plugs.
Quantum.
So anyway, I mean, granted, we here at the Audio
Unleashed
podcast would never say, well, yeah, we would often say that there's no way in hell this thing works. And so I think we can't say that yet because we can't see what's in these boxes or these things or whatever it is this guy's selling.
Yeah.
But we can say, well, nothing else has an effect on the AC line that affects your sound.
We could safely say these are very extraordinary claims. How about that?
They're extraordinarily extraordinary claims.
And there's no evidence to back them up.
No evidence. And, somebody's going to review it. Six Moons or somebody like that will review it and say it's incredible.
Yeah.
And we're actually going to talk a little bit more about a statement very similar to that.
Yeah.
In our Patreon segment coming up soon.
Yeah, real soon, because we're about out of time, buddy.
I think we are.
Yeah, man. You want to do some credits?
I do, and I have something special.
What do you got?
Our good friend Gordon Soak of Innovative Audio. I was just up in Vancouver visiting him, testing cassette players, if you can believe that.
Heck yeah!
And he's like, "I got a gift for you," and I'm like, "Okay," because Gordon goes to lots of estate sales, and a lot of times you buy a lot, meaning lot number 43 or whatever, right?
Right. Yeah.
And it's got 3 old receivers and some speakers he wants, and it's also got some other crap, but he's got to take that. So in one of the lots, he got a YouRock guitar. Have you ever seen this thing?
No.
Okay, I got to send you a clip. And you look at it and you're like, it looks like a video game controller like they used to have with Guitar Hero or whatever. Yeah. But it's not. It's a full-on instrument. And it's and I'm kind of looking at this going like, he's like, look at the YouTube video. And he plays a YouTube video, this guy playing it. It's like, this thing actually works.
Wow.
So it's this weird electronic guitar that has sort of string actuators and a fingerboard that doesn't have any actual strings on it. But it's got, 60, 70, 80 different sounds. It's got synth sounds in it. It's got a whammy bar that's all electronic,
Yeah.
It's got a bunch of stuff in there I'll never figure out how to work. And it's got a normal 1/4-inch output, so you can plug it into whatever. So I'm going to do a new tune with that thing playing the melody, and then I'll probably have some double bass on it. Usual crap.
Very cool.
And then we'll pull something else out of the archive that's some combination of me and you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're editing this one and all of the mixing, mastering, and all of that. And so, yeah, it's your turn to do that. Anything else? Anybody else we need to shout out? Or I can't think of anything.
This is a Butterburger production.
It is a Butterburger production. Thank you for remembering. We forget to say that sometimes.
We got to, and thank you to our good pal, Erin Hardison, for suffering through a lot of completely unnecessary crap and giving everybody else in the whole industry something to talk about.
But I tell you, it's really heartening to me the way the entire industry rallied around Erin.
That's true.
Gene Delasala of Audioholics did a great video in support of him.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of support coming from, and I think that really speaks to what a mensch Erin is. I mean, everybody loves him because he's just a really, really nice guy. And, Eric Alexander picked on the wrong dude because it's one of those rare circumstances where everybody loves Erin. So,
Yeah, and I will say, if you mess with someone in the press, the first thing that person is probably going to do is email it to all the rest of their friends in the press.
Yep.
It's been like that way ever since they invented email.
Yep. Yeah,
literally since CompuServe. Okay.
Wow, you hopped in the Wayback Machine for that one.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, everybody, thanks for joining us. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Patrons, stick around. We got one more for you.
Bye, everybody.
Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end. If you liked what you heard and wish there'd been a little bit more of it, we got some good news for you.
Indeed, we do. If you check out patreon.com/Audio Unleashed, all one word, you can get new episodes a little earlier than everybody else.
And sometimes it's like a day or two early. Sometimes it's nearly a week. We never really know until we start editing.
But the big plus is that you get extended cuts of every episode. And usually that's going to mean a whole extra segment that's about maybe a geekier topic or something that's a little more personal to us or something that's just going to really appeal to the hardcore Audio Unleashed listener.
Yeah, what it boils down to is if you're somebody who would support Audio Unleashed on Patreon, we're going to make sure the bonuses to every episode are really aimed straight at your interests.
Yeah. And so if you want to hear these segments, you can subscribe to our Patreon for $3 a month, which is less than I spend every single day on my cup of coffee when I go to Starbucks to write my boring articles.
Yeah. One more time with that URL, that's patreon.com/Audio Unleashed.
Or Audio
Unleashed. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.